Illustrator is this icon that's orange and black in the dock, and it has an AI on it. This stands for Adobe Illustrator. That is also the file type. So it is a .ai when you write the file for it. Okay, does that make sense? So if I make an Illustrator file, it has a .ai on it. Are there any empty seats, by the way? Are all of them full? Good? Okay, just want to make sure. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that orange icon, and it's going to launch the software for the first time. And so I like to launch it from scratch so you can sort of see how the software is populated. Okay, so this is the 2018 version. If you have it at home, you have the 2019 version. So you're actually ahead of us. And I cannot update it. There's a change that Adobe made in how they're managing their licensing that's conflicting with open lab environments like this. So I just sent out a really long email to the administration in the college over the break saying, when is this going to get fixed? Because this is my lifeblood, and if I can't have this working correctly, it's been almost 6 months now, what am I supposed to do? Students have more current software than I do. That doesn't make any sense. So my point is, this is 2018. If you work from home, you have 2019. You might have to back save. So I'm just mentioning that. All right, so this is what it looks like. You can see that I have previous files. So I have a bunch of sort of a messy screen, right? And then you'll notice that I have a couple of buttons on the left. I can either open an existing document or I can create a new document. So what I want to do is I want to make a new document, and I'm not going to pay a lot of attention to the settings. We'll talk about the settings a little bit later. I just want to make the document really quickly, and I want to talk about how the user interface is structured. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit Create New, right? And then I got this window over here that says New Documents. I'm not paying too much attention to this. I'm just going to go ahead and hit this blue button that says Create, right? So I'm going to get an Illustrator file to open. I think I might need to restart my machine. It's going really slow. So see if you get that. That's called the spinning wheel of death. And you want to avoid that, okay? A couple of things about Illustrator. Illustrator is a really volatile software. What do I mean by volatile? Can anybody tell me what I mean by volatile? I'm sorry? It changes, yes, and it changes in a bad way. So if I'm working with a file and I'm saying it changes in a bad way, what would be a bad thing to happen to a file? It crashes, okay? Or it corrupts. So I might be working on my Illustrator file today, and I try to open it tomorrow, and all of a sudden it won't work right. It's broken, it's corrupt. Or I'm working for 2 hours, and all of a sudden Illustrator goes, I don't want to work anymore. Boop, and it just shuts you out. So that happens on a regular basis. It's a volatile software. I just said that, right? More so than any of the other Adobe products. More so than Photoshop, InDesign, After Effects, Premiere. It has a high rate of corruption and crash. So what does that mean for you as a student? What do you think you should be doing on a regular basis? Saving backups and also doing what? Just saving. So what I like to say is, when you start working on your projects, when you feel like you accomplished something meaningful, hit Command S or File Save. All right, so what do I mean by something meaningful? I just spent 5 minutes drawing something. I don't want to draw that again. Hit Save. All right, the other thing that we're going to practice is something that I call revving your file, which is a form of backing up your work, but it's in progression. So in other words, every day that you work on your project, you should give it a new number. So you pad or add numbers to the end of the name of your file. So today I would call let's say I was working on project 1. Today I'm going to make my project 1 file. I'm going to call it project 1 _ 001. When I work on it tomorrow, I'm going to call it project 1 _ 002, 003, 004. If I work on this for a couple of weeks, I might have 15 or 16 iterations of it. Maybe I'm saving more than one a day. Right? Does that make sense? Now, the reason this is really important is that the file can corrupt at any point in time. I could be 2 weeks into my file, and then it just decides it doesn't want to work. So if I've been revving my file every day, I've only lost a day's worth of work or maybe a couple of hours worth of work instead of 2 weeks worth of work. Does that make sense? So revving your file is really important. That was a professional practice that I was taught in graduate school, and I was also taught this. The companies that I worked for all practiced this. And if you didn't, you were running the risk of losing a file when it was due, and guess who was responsible for it? I was, the designer, right? So I say or advise you to do these things to protect yourself and also follow what are called best practices. These are best professional practices. Okay, so I'm going to save my file in a second. I'll show you how I would like it to be saved. And then, so we talked about saving often and revving, calling it a different name every day. All right, so this is what Illustrator looks like. Now, you'll notice that I have this little window over here on the right. You see this little window floating out here? You'll notice that it has a name on it. What is the name of the window? Layers, right? So in Illustrator, they don't call them windows. They call them panels. Okay, they used to call them palettes. So at some point, Adobe decided to change the vocabulary of their software and UI. They used to call it palettes, and for the longest time, I was stuck with that, even though they called them panels. They call them panels now. So this is called the layer panel, right? And you'll notice that it's populated. It shouldn't be like that when you first launch the software. So that means that somebody has modified this or worked on this previously. I'm the person that worked on it previously. So when you look at this environment, all of these Adobe Illustrator sessions might look different from one another because somebody's worked on it. Okay, so what's really important when you start working with the software is that when you come into the lab, or maybe at some point at home, I do this at home, I practice this all the time, right? So I'm just kind of looking at my workspace and I go, man, it's really messy. I want to clean up my workspace. So you'll notice that there's a, what did I call this? I didn't call it a panel at first. I described it as what? No, before that. I don't know if you guys caught it. I called it a window. Who said a window? So a panel or a palette is a form of a window. Okay, now check out your menus. Do you see a menu that allows you to manage your panels and palettes? I called it a window, right? Do you see a menu that allows you to manage your panels and palettes? Do you see it? It's right there, window. Okay, so the window menu manages your panels and palettes. And it has a list of all of the panels and palettes that are available to you. You'll notice that any one that has a check next to it, that's a panel that's open, right? So look, the layer panel has a check. That means it's open. Oh yeah, it sure is. It's open. Okay, so you'll notice that when I go to the window area, there's a submenu called Workspace. And under Workspace, I am working in a particular set. So the set that I teach to is called Essentials Classic. Essentials Classic. Okay, and you'll notice that towards the bottom of this little pop-up, it says Reset Essentials Classic. So what I want you to do is I want you to go to Window, I want you to go to Workspace, and I want you to go to Reset Essentials Classic. And that's going to reset all of the panels and windows to the default state. Does that make sense? So everything has been cleaned up. All the icons should be where I expect them to be. And now I can sort of work with this comfortably. So what I'd like you to do when you come into the lab, I want you to launch Illustrator. I want you to go to the window menu, and I want you to reset the workspace to Reset Essentials Classic. Does that make sense, everybody?